Alright, hey guys, here we are, hole number 3. Now, not sure what to expect on this. There's been some tournaments where for Master, they'll give you a nice tailwind, potentially to go to the green. This is apparently not one of them. So I was kind of preparing in the hopes that we would maybe be doing some kind of bounce shot off of here and trying to get up by the green, but it looks like for this tournament, they've essentially restricted that from happening. So we're going to do a little bit more of a precision shot. This is going to be a much easier hole with things like Royal Ball as opposed to Kingmakers. When you can extend that range as far as possible and try to keep off the power, it's going to make for an easier play here. So you can see that's kind of what my opponent here has is, some kind of wind reduction ball to kind of keep that wind down, but also keep that power on. Only thing, I'd like to kind of critique on where you see my opponent. I would typically like to get the ball just a little bit more right than that. So you'll see that I'll probably try to curl it a little bit more. I'm thinking somewhere, with wind in the face, almost maybe, max a Pak 5 spin here. That's 5.7 bars or so. And, you can see with where my opponent is, as I mentioned. So if you can get this kind of curled around just a little bit better, it is typically just a little bit better result. I'm going to go roughly 10 rings here. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to try to curl it just a little bit harder. It's also going to be kind of a specific as to where you land on this island. That looks relatively centered. And you can see that I am really trying to get it over to the right here. This is going to create a nice, better angle. And the biggest thing that you'll want to worry about is the, keeping that topspin off. You can see that that's almost about perfect with where I got. And I also have a better angle on top of what my opponent has. So what that does is it's going to kind of open up my options a little bit more. You'll see my opponent is going to have to kind of go for something that's just a little bit more angled towards the left of this rough, like very much more closer. You have to keep in mind that opponent here also has to factor in wind effect. So you can see that they're pointing on the hole. I wasn't really paying attention to where Max Club is, but I would imagine that if you're going to keep this on the hole, almost 10 rings here, and that looks maybe just a tad under adjusted. So I would imagine that, this will probably wind up towards the right. This is that actually looks like a better adjustment than I thought. So he actually did, you can actually see that it landed. It was actually an overpull. He might have been a little bit more towards the min club. So I can almost guarantee he was near mid club. So that's why it looked like an underpull when in reality it probably was actually pretty good because of the fact that he was so much more towards min club. But one of the things that you'll see that makes this a little bit easier is you'll want to try to play wind effect more so than anything. So you'll see that I'm essentially trying to predict where the wind is going to push in, as opposed to starting on the hole. You'll see anytime you have crooked fairways, it makes a lot more sense to do it this way. And I am going to go maybe just a tad over 8 rings. Not very much. I'm thinking 8.3 in this case because we are down towards the min club. Now, I did catch a great ball. I would imagine with the great ball might block this over, but it is just coming up a little bit short as well. So I didn't quite play enough of the wind effect, perfectly. I kind of had the left to right component because had I got a perfect ball, that would have probably been shooting right at the cup. But the biggest thing that I did is I didn't let the ball guide stay through the cup enough there. So that's what you'll want to try to do is you always want to try to find some place where it looks like a relatively solid land zone where the ball guide isn't jumping all over the place. But I really do recommend on holes like that you try to do more of a ball guide effect, wind effect, some kind of offsetting your ball guide method on shots like that, because trying to do an overplay that means you're kind of changing the way that it's landing on the fairway, because you can see my opponent has to overplay the rings. As a result, a lot of times you'll find that the fairway might be a little bit more crooked where you actually overplay to. So on holes like this, where the fairway is very hilly and kind of on a slope, you'll want to do a little bit more of an offset method, and then just try to master that amount of offset. You can see the biggest thing that I had complications with there is I didn't keep that ball guide through the hole enough. So you'll want to just extend that just a little bit more than I did. But all in all, everything else looked pretty good. So keep all that in mind. Good luck. I'll see you guys on number 4.